We talked hot prospects when it came to pitching and hitting yesterday. And unfortunately, today, we're going to talk about some of the colder prospects, both on the mound and at the plate. Some guys that have just gotten off to slow starts and or just really hit a wall over the last couple weeks. And we're going to try to contextualize what's going on there and then give you a low, medium, high level of concern that we have for the player. You'll probably notice that the younger they are, the lower the concern's generally going to be for obvious reasons. Yeah. But if there's some things that really stick out, that can be different. So that's why we're going to go case by case. As always, Jack is going to walk us through it. And as always, Jack put together, a bunch of these names. And last time I actually mentioned, on the heat sheet, I was like, Jack put these names together just to acknowledge that you would put the time together and put all the, took the time to do it and put all the numbers together. But the funny thing now is I didn't realize with the heat sheets that I know what's going to start happening on YouTube every single week. It's going to be, what about this guy? This guy played well. This guy, which I get, because if I'm a fan of a team, I'm always going to be like, well, what about our guy? He's balling out. So now I didn't even realize, but inadvertently, I'm just deflecting all of the blame to you. So if your player who was doing well didn't get mentioned on the last episode, that was all Jack's fault. But, he'll work on it. He'll get better. And on the negative side, I don't think anyone's going to be upset about us not mentioning their prospect. Actually, I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, in the YouTube comments. But no, Jack actually took the time to put together a bunch of these names of guys that have just not been throwing that well or hitting that well. And I appreciate you doing that. And I think it's going to be fun to go through some of these players in a negative way, but still, I do enjoy trying to figure out what's going on and then try to assess, what the likelihood is of them turning that around.
So I love putting this list together because I love to be a hater, and I like hating is something that gets me up in the morning. And this is really good for me, for my mental health, to kind of drag other people down.
I'm excited when Arjun Nimmala is 0 for 4 again. Let's go.
Yes, they punched out 3 more times. Let's go. No, that is something that really upsets me because I like these guys just as much as you do. If they're in your favorite team's farm, I want them to succeed just as bad as you do, because this is the fun stuff for us, seeing young guys start on the ground floor and work their way up to the highest level that we've got in this sport on the planet and succeed there. It's very fun to see that happen. And I'm excited to kind of get your reasoning to the struggles. The other thing, next time we do a heat sheet, if you say, what about this guy? I want you to DM me directly, Jack_McMullen11 on Twitter. And I want you to DM me directly. And without fail, I'm going to reply to you 2 of these emojis, the kind of shaking, like that guy, just to show you that I was wrong. You were right. We should have included that guy. So feel free to DM me. My DMs are open.
Those emojis, there's nothing you can do after that.
There's nothing you can do after that. So if you come up with a witty response to that emoji in my response to you, I'll tip my cap to you and I'll shout.
Yeah, you would. Now, I will say there was one comment about Luis Perales, and he had just gotten, I think he just got promoted as well. I put out his last start on Twitter. I think I even texted you. I won't bother you too much of hey, yo, look at my tweet. But if there's if I cut up some video on some crazy stuff, I'll be like, yo, dude, look at this. And
you Perales retweeted something yesterday. People forget.
That was sarcastic. I know you're pro Wrigley food over
yes.
What is it? Guaranteed rate. I always forget. Guaranteed rate. Guaranteed rate food is on a different level, and we can talk about that on the Just Baseball show. But it's not even freaking close. You can get we can hash that out. I know you like your traditional dog better. Unbelievable options at Guaranteed Rate. I tried a bunch of different things. They're all delicious, and it was cool.
Get the campfire milkshake.
Is that at Guaranteed Rate or is that at Wrigley?
No, that's at Guaranteed Rate. That's the one thing that's getting positive PR for the White Sox right now is the campfire milkshake.
I think it just, dude, it's the same thing. There's so much redundancy at Wrigley. It's just the same hot dog stand over and over and over again with tenders, and that's it.
You know what?
It's a baseball game. What else do you want? Oh, I should want less food options because it's traditional. Why are we going to pretend that that's better? Of course I want more food and better options.
You should want bare bones, meat and potatoes. Let's go watch the ball game and get drunk. I'm excited to bring Brandon Anderson, our graphics guy, to US Cellular, and not US Cellular, Guaranteed Rate. Oh my gosh. And we're gonna have the campfire milkshake, and we're gonna send you photos of the campfire milkshake at Guaranteed Rate.
It just adds to my point, though. But on the point of Luis Perales, Red Sox prospect, 21 years old. We talked about him in the Red Sox system. I thought he had a strong case to be the best pitching prospect in that system when we were talking about him last year. And we wanted to make him a breakout guy. I had him on there when we were doing the breakout pitchers, but you and I talked about it and we're like, hey, he kind of broke out last year. So I felt like it was a cheap one. But what he did last time out was unreal. 5 innings, 1 hit, no runs, 2 walks, 12 Ks. But the fastball averaged 98. And remember, this is like this crazy over-the-top release point. It's Nick Pivetta-esque, but like a longer and over-the-top release point. It's weird. It seems like it's hard to duplicate, but he makes it work, and his command's been as solid as ever, really. And as you know, like those guys that are straight over the top, it either becomes very difficult to snap something over, or they'll struggle to go the other way with the changeup. For him, it kind of seems like he's able to do a little bit of both, and he's been able to go cutter. That pitch has been gross for him. The changeup has been a pitch that he started to mix in, now using more of a splitter. And I think that was the problem. He was more of, okay, from over the top, I naturally cut a little bit. And so he was just not able to get that pronation and that changeup. Now he goes split, and he's ripping some dirty splitters from that high release point, and the vertical drop is crazy. Perales is a dude, and as long as he can stay healthy, because I do think that there's a lot of pressure on that arm. But again, you can say that about anybody now. This guy, especially now in the system with what we're seeing from a Red Sox pitching development side, I'm believing in Perales as much as ever. And I loved him, coming into this year.
So his 4-seam is what, like 20 to 22 inches of IVB because he's at such a high release point. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have like kind of a heat zone of where he's throwing his cutter? Because I feel like that pitch would really play at the top of the zone. He would get swings and misses. Both. Okay.
Which I love. So he's getting whiff at the top, and then he's burying in on lefties down below, because the other thing, it plays well at the top, but from when you're getting 20 inches of vert, you also get those frozen, strike threes at the knees. So if you're kind of waiting for a fastball at the knees and it ends up being a cutter that cuts below it and you're a lefty, you're swinging right over that thing. And it seemed like that's what he's able to do too. So it plays well at the top, plays well at the bottom. And the release is not like 6'5". It's 6 feet, like I think it's 6.2 feet. So from that point, if you're getting 20 inches of vert, that's still well above average carry. And that thing's just riding. So that's a guy that didn't come up in the queries because he didn't have as much of a stretch like that. The 2 starts before were only 4 innings and gave up a couple runs in each of them. But there's some live stuff, and I'm excited to see what he does in double with Kyle Teal as his battery mate.
100%. Before we get into the cold hitters and the cold pitchers, I saw some unfortunate news yesterday in the New York Post from Corey Sipkin. Apparently, David Stearns announced that Jet Williams could need surgery on his right wrist. Apparently, that was like kind of the latest media availability. He's been out since, I think, April 30th with right wrist soreness. I don't know what that compounded into, but Jet could miss extended time, which like really, really stinks for that guy's development coming off the year he had last year.
It's horrible. And at least it explains some of the inconsistencies we saw out of the gate. I mean, a small hitter that just relies on quickness and his hands, to make a lot of contact and hit the ball harder than I think people expect, having a wrist issue that can definitely sap him, especially the shorter, punchy lever guys. So, I feel like part of me is like, okay, you definitely don't want to get under the knife if you don't need to, especially with wrist stuff and mobility and things like that. But the other side of me is like, you're 20 years old, you're already in Double-A, and you've already had a lot of success under your belt. Like, don't rush it back and just have a lost year here where we're trying to fight through it. And then he ends up getting surgery in the offseason and gets a late start to next season. And then he's trying to get, his feet under him after the season already starts then too. So I'm just nervous this becomes similar to like the Zach Veen situation, which we saw last year. He tries to play through it and then ends up wiping out the season. And, I hope that they kind of get this rectified sooner rather than later. But it does explain why he started slowly. And I think that should at least give some calm to the slow start, but also just, I'm sure you got to be pretty worried as a Mets fan just to what this means for him, moving forward and what their plan's going to be, in terms of getting him back on the field.
Yeah, and I didn't put him in the cold hitters because, like, again, it was a not great April, but I think we know exactly why it wasn't a great April for Jet at this point. You got a second cortisone shot. So the first one did not ease his wrist soreness. He got a second. And if the second doesn't ease it,
Was it cortisone?
It was cortisone, apparently.
People are still doing those?
I
I thought we were on the PRP thing now. I thought that's where we were going.
Platelet-rich plasma, PRP.
Yeah, that's
Didn't
what it should be.
give Rizzo a migraine, or was it cortisone that gave Rizzo a migraine?
I bet it was cortisone. I don't know, but I thought cortisone was kind of like out of the picture nowadays. I thought that's more of like a Band-Aid. But the other thing with Williams is, yes, he wasn't hitting well in terms of like the production. And even in his last 6 games, though, 27 plate appearances, he didn't strike out once. So, like, the guy sees the ball well. He's on time. I just literally think his wrist was just not allowing him to get good swings off. Like, he was getting on base at a 400 clip, but he had just 2 hits. So, I mean, he's still always going to be that guy. And if he can't get his good swings off, like, there's no point in him being out there. So, hopefully they get that right.
Yeah. Well, jumping to cold hitters now, kind of the way that I looked at this, we did the last 2 weeks since May 13th when we did the heat sheet, which makes more sense because guys could have gotten off to slow starts and they're really heating up. With cold hitters, we're going to do it less often than a heat sheet. So I just kind of wanted to go on the season to this point. So I think highest game total that we've got is like 45 games, and it's just season numbers. And I'm going to ask you about this start in the macro. I'm not asking you about the last 2 weeks. I'm like, hey, what's gone into this guy's, last 2 months of struggles? Because 2 weeks of struggles, like we see hitters all the time go through 2 weeks of struggles or 3 bad starts in a row. But that's the beauty of the minor leagues. Like you bounce back. This is them learning to be a professional and doing it every day for 6 months. So, I thought it was fair to do 2 months instead of 2 weeks, but we'll start with the hitters. And I wanted to pluck, for the most part, top 100 guys. And we'll start like at kind of the tippy top or, tippy top for some and then top for others. It's Ethan Salas in San Diego. He's been in high A Fort Wayne this year. Mm-hmm. Ethan Salas in 39 games is slashing 208, 320, 306. That's a 626 OPS. He's got 1 homer. I know that's not an easy place to leave the ballpark, but like you'd hope that there was a bit more power there. He's only spraying a couple of doubles here and there. Does he look overmatched? And the way that we're going to do this is I will pose to you level of worry, low, medium, or high. He's 17. I assume the answer is low, but like where are you at with the struggles of Ethan Salas to this point?
I would say this is exactly what we expected. I hate saying that, like, and be like, oh, like this is what we knew this was going to happen. Like, no, I'm not saying it like that. Like, it was baked into the rankings this year when everybody's like, oh, why is Ethan Salas so low or whatever? It's like, because I'm gonna watch him struggle this year in high A, which is fine, and then we're going to see how he finishes the year, and then we'll assess from there. I'm not a believer in just like, oh, he got assigned aggressively, so we're going to promote him aggressively in our top prospect rankings. I think I like that he's working with some of their top pitchers and was in high A, and I think that was valuable. And even at last year, double A for a little bit, I get why they did that now, just more from the lens of working with Snelling and everything. When we talked to Robbie, like he mentioned just working with Ethan, and I think that's why they did that. I don't think they gave a crap about what Ethan does at the plate. The more I just started to gather that. But even now, like him being in high A versus low A, so we're watching him struggle in high A instead of maybe putting up solid numbers in low A. That's fine. But I think we kind of expected that the guy that's 17 years old in high A was going to probably have a learning curve in the beginning of the year, even though he got a little bit of a taste of it last year. It's just, how is any 17-year-old going to just roll into that? And we're not just talking 17-year-old, Wander Franco type where he just has a natural ability to hit and he's going to play the infield like he always has. There's a kid that also has to handle catching and has to handle the development there. So I think the task that's being, put in front of him is so tall. And I think he's done a pretty good job overall. And to answer your question, and the reason why my concern is pretty much zero is, one, I think we expected this. 2, he doesn't look overmatched. He just looks like he's not comfortable enough to get his A swing off. So, he's grinding out at bats. He's not getting blown away, but he puts the ball in play and it's like, it looks like it's just a B swing to a degree. And like we have these bat speed, monitors now and at the big league level. And, you can see now against some of the top velocity fastballs. I think Fangraphs just put out a piece about this. Bat speed will actually tend to slow down sometimes because guys are just a little bit uncomfortable and they're not, they don't know if they are on it as much, but they can still make contact with it. Like, I think that's what we're seeing with Salas is the stuff is just on a different level from what he's seen. We're talking about a guy that's always had a great approach that's chasing over a 30% clip now, but the contact rates are competitive. I think still when he really hunkers down, the pitch recognition is still good enough. And, we've seen flashes. That home run he hit the other day was the hardest hit ball of his professional career at 108. I know 108 is not crazy, but he's 17. Yeah. So, I mean, this is the least concern I'll pretty much have of anybody. And we're going to repeat a lot of the same points with Sebastian Walcott too. Yeah. But I do think he looks comfortable overall relative to what almost anybody else in his position would be in. And I get that's why he's, so hyped up and so celebrated. But if anybody out there is like adjusting their assessment on him based on the slow start, that's not fair. And I think that's putting too much stock into assignment rather than what we actually saw him doing prior to this year. You got to look at the player in a vacuum.
Yeah. I mean, 0 for me too. And obviously you're going to have a bit more like informed of a reasoning behind it, but he's 17, he's catching, he's in high A, 0. Spencer Jones, like knee jerk for me is a little bit high. Spencer Jones of the Yankees, 35 games in Double-A to this point, slashing 210, 299, 304. Just 2 homers in 35 games, 14 ribbies. He's punched out 56 times in 35 games. Like, I don't, it's not an overmatched thing. Like, I just think this guy is too long for his own good at points. When at least like I see the struggles when I watch a Somerset game, like it really feels like he is almost like lanky when it really never felt like that before.
It's weird, man. It just looks like a different hitter even from what we saw in spring training. I don't really know what happened. And I understand spring training, small sample, and we don't dive into the small samples too much. I was just diving into the swing mechanics. Swing mechanics looked way better. And to your point about like the length, he was looking so much shorter through spring training. We were watching him. I mean, how many people were talking about how few pitches he had swung and missed at through the zone and things like that. Small sample, but when you're that big and that long of a guy in the plate in terms of just your arms, your legs, like you're 6'7". If you have that big of a shift, even in a 10-game sample, there's probably a mechanical aspect to it that is allowing you to make more contact. So it has been really surprising to me so far. And I do think part of it is the swing decisions. And I do think part of it is recognizing breaking balls. He just still continues to struggle to recognize spin. And that is why I'm a bit more concerned. Like the fastball he seems to be okay with it most of the time. I think in spring training, most pitchers were working on things more than actually executing a game plan to get Spencer Jones out. And now Spencer Jones is seeing a lot more spin and then a lot more fastballs way at the top. And I think he's just really getting caught in between right now. I'd say the concerns medium to high, just medium because high. It's so non-competitive right now, but it's such a small sample still. I'll say medium just because of what he did in spring training. And I think he deserves a little bit of time here. It is Double-A, but I mean, it's been rough. And I think that the point that you drive home that is really important is 2 home runs. When he is making contact, it's on the ground. It's 53% ground ball rate. It's a high medium for sure.
It sounds overly simple from my end, but like if you're 6'7" and built like that, I want homers. Like I'm not looking for a guy that's gonna, drive to the alleys. Like I'm not looking for a guy that's gonna have 35 doubles in a given season. I want to see 30 homers from you. And he had 16 last year. That was frankly like underwhelming. And I know it was his first full season of pro ball, but like I want more. You're a big guy. You're a big left-handed swing. I want to see a bunch of homers. And right now, like we just haven't gotten it.
You got to elevate, and like you're going to strike out. I think we've accepted that. Right? You're going to K. It's probably a 30, 35 hit tool.
And if you're going to K like that, homers, not doubles, homers.
Elevate. And right now, I mean, he's just not at all. I'm with you on that. And again, I think a big part of that is the secondary and especially breaking ball recognition. I mean, we're talking 45% chase on sliders versus 20% against everything else. So
Yeah.
I think that's clearly something that's sticking out here with Jones. So I'd put high medium.
Got you. Colson Montgomery of the White Sox is next. 45 games. This guy's hitting 221 with a 736 OPS. That may not sound bad, but let me add some context here. Charlotte is his home ballpark. He plays for Charlotte. Charlotte is the most hitter-friendly ballpark in AAA baseball, not in the PCL. Okay. The league average OPS in the International League at this point is 771. So he's 40 points below league average in the OPS department with the most hitter-friendly ballpark in the league as his home ballpark.
Yeah.
He's also punching out a ton. He's got 59 punch-outs already in 45 games. I ask you, like, yeah, we'll do the low, medium, high thing, but should he have started this year in Birmingham?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see the AAA assignment, to be honest. I was okay with it just because it's
the White Sox. Yeah.
It's the White Sox, go be aggressive. And I figured, okay, put him in trips. I think we talked about it going into the year a little bit where it was just like, okay, put him in trips and he's just going to be there all year. Mm-hmm. And if you're okay with him struggling in the front half, but you like the coaches there and you want him working with big leaguers there, because, for these terrible baseball teams, the AAA team ends up being an extension of that, of like just castaways that they want to like stick there and have a revolving door. And it can be valuable for just a bunch of different veterans to be there and be around a Colson Montgomery. So I do think there was like a professional aspect to it and an off the field aspect to it that applied to Montgomery there. And I think they figured, why does it matter to have him in double versus triple? And I also think he looked kind of very, very comfortable at double. So I'm okay with them challenging him. Maybe he could have started the year in double and built some momentum and then got up to AAA. But I would still say I don't think it's looking that bad with him. It just seems like he's very pull dependent. And if you look at like the BABIP, and I've noticed it just in general, like BABIP, because I understand it when you're looking at prospects too. Like I think sometimes we conflate poor batted ball quality and BABIP and don't realize that like it's not bad luck sometimes when the BABIP is low. If you're not hitting the ball well, your BABIP's going to be low. So you got to kind of find the nuance there. Montgomery's hitting the ball hard, but everything is pulled. And I think that's part of the reason why, like, he's pretty, like, you're going to see he's going to get shifted. And I think everything being pulled to the right side, it's going to make it harder when you're only using half the field. It's going to be harder to have a higher batting average on balls in play. I think that's part of it. I also think that, he's just adjusting. He's 22 years old, but I also feel like from a developmental standpoint, he's like 21 because he has missed a lot of at-bats. He did get pushed to AA too quickly with the whole Project Birmingham thing, which I think disrupted his progression some. I think you could argue he's lost almost a full season between Project Birmingham and then an injury. Yes, they sent him out to the AFL to make up for some lost time, but to me,
that's
he looks like
it's
like a 21-year-old that you're throwing in high A or in AAA, excuse me. So overall, I think the underlying stuff looks pretty good though. Sub 20% chase rate, contact rates are still fine. The strikeout rate has dropped as the season has progressed, but he needs to be using the whole field. This can't be a big, long levered guy that catches everything out front and tries to pull everything, because I think what we're seeing is more experienced pitchers see that swing path, see what he's trying to do, and guys like that are easy to allow to get themselves out. And that's what happens when you're a 22-year-old in AAA who has not had a lot of pro at-bats.
Yeah, I think AAA is really important there because like the pitching in the International League is not good relative to the level of hitting. And, the amount of starters that I see that are sitting 88 with their fastball is outstanding in AAA baseball. Or astounding, not outstanding. It's very bad. Like it's astounding the number of starting pitchers that I see sitting 88. But the thing about those guys is like they can put 88 where they want. And, a lot of major league caliber hitters or borderline major league caliber hitters that are typically in AAA that are, 26, 27, 30, 32 years old, they know what they can do with 88 miles an hour. But if 88 is well located against Colson Montgomery, it feels like he's kind of developed a habit of, putting 88 hard, but putting 88 where the pitcher wants it.
Exactly. You nailed it. And you watch this on a daily basis, I'm sure, where like you'll see somebody like Colson Montgomery facing AJ Smith-Shawver, and Smith-Shawver will throw 96, in the upper third and he'll clip it and it's gone because these guys are freaks and they can catch up to anything. But then you'll watch Randy Dobnak work the bottom of the zone with a few changeups, and Montgomery can't adjust and rolls over and it's a pull side ground ball or a pull side pop up. Like, that's the hard part about AAA is the bad pitchers, quote unquote, are so like clever and are crafty that you just don't really get a day off. I was talking about that actually with Griffin the other day, because it's like, even when you're facing a gauntlet of arms and then you're finally like, oh, we're going to see something a little bit softer, like a Bryce Elder. And then Bryce Elder just gets you to ground out 10 times in a row. And before you know it, you blink and it's the 5th inning. And that's supposed to be one of your maybe more reasonable matchups, at least, especially from a K perspective. So that's the hard part with Trips, man. Like, all those guys have either been to the bigs or are so close that they're there for a reason, whether their stuff is the reason or their pitchability is, where I think AA, it's all stuff. Yeah. And you can outsmart those guys, which Montgomery did with a sub-20 chase. And then Montgomery's got a great swing. And when he cheats for pull side, like, he's not going to miss a fastball that's left or a hanger over the middle. Not getting as many of those. I still think he's going to be great. I put low, very low with him.
Got you. How about Adley Amador in Colorado? Yeah. And I know he went on a little bit of a tear.
Where are you at on Colson? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I mean, I'm low because he's in AAA. Like, I think he's just in the wrong place. And you know what? Like, I really do trust Chris Getz with that decision, because Chris has gotten to know Colson Montgomery. Like, he was his farm director. So, I trust that there is something that you don't see from a stat, from a watching the game on TV perspective, that like Chris Getz knows that nobody else does, or Chris Getz knows and the White Sox know that no other organization does. So I believe that they have him in Charlotte for a reason. I think statistically speaking, it's not great for him. So I'm low, but like, it does kind of stink to see him punching out as much as he is and, being out chessed by like, Willie Peralta adjacents. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that though.
So Adeal Amador, an interesting cat, because his numbers actually look profoundly better than they did like 3 days ago. He had a 3-homer stretch in 2 games. Amador has 4 homers to this point, but that's not what you look at with Adeal Amador. Even accounting for the hot weekend that he had with AA Hartford, Adeal Amador in 40 games is hitting 174 with a 264 slug. So he's got a 594 OPS. He's walking, but the best hit tool in the minor leagues is below the Mendoza line by a good bit. He's below 180. He's hitting a $174 in 40 games. He was at like a $150 before the weekend. Are you high with Amador? What's the word?
I'm high. I'm high for sure on the concern. I would say so. I think he's going to work through it, but the patience with a guy like this, when you're seeing him so lost at the plate, is much thinner, because he has to be on it. We were talking about, again, like you said, that one of the guys that has, I've been saying for a while, the best hit tool in the minor leagues. You look at the batted ball data the last few years, you look at the swing, you'll get what he was able to do, especially from the left side. I mean, it was pretty close to unmatched. I do wonder how much that hamate has now like bled into some bad habits. A switch hitter with the hamate issue that, I think can get a little bit top hand dominant at times, especially from the left side, where it just ends up making him so steep. And he's always been a guy that's going to put the ball on the ground more. Anybody that's an elite bat to ball guy is generally going to be a bit more flat, path wise. But the level of steepness and then just also flat aspect to his swing right now is not good. And that's what stood out to me. I mean, against breaking balls, it's pretty much automatic in the ground. Same with off speed stuff. It's been a little bit better of late. And I think you're seeing the flashes. Like, I mean, you don't pick up 5 hits and 2 home runs in a single game on accident. And he had another home run the day after that. I think he's starting to ease out of it. And it is important to note that he's just 21 and just turned 21. So still extremely young. Yeah. But I do feel like the hamate aspect may have crept into his swing over the last year, and just trying to play through it in the front end and then just trying to come back from it on the back end. I just see a little bit of dominance with the top hand and just getting in and out of the zone a lot quicker. A lot of the underlying stuff still looks decent. The contact rates are slightly down, but still really solid. And I think that the more the issue is just how everything is legitimately straight into the ground versus other times it used to be more, yes, it's a higher ground ball rate, but it's hardline drives and skipping ground balls that get through. Now it's kind of like choppers and weak ground balls to the pull side and a path that just isn't there. I think he can get back, and he's just too talented. So I almost want to lean back to medium. It's just I would never have expected to see Adley Amador take some of the swings that he's taking, and there was a couple that I was floored in terms of just how uncomfortable he looked and how in between he looked. It was just very clear that he was in between. A couple breaking balls where it was already in the catcher's glove, and it was like a sword would be selling it short. And so that to me is a guy that's in his head a little bit and is just in between and overthinking it. So I think in terms of what it looks like right now, it should be high, but I'm going to adjust to medium when you actually take in the context of there is an injury to point towards that could have thrown him off a little bit. He still is just 21 years old as of a month ago. And it's not like he's striking out at a 30% clip. So I'm going to go medium, but I just would have never expected this out of him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to stay at high, and I really don't like putting much stock into batting average whatsoever. And, I'm not the eliminate batting average. I do think that batting average carries weight. RBIs, like, I don't really think it carries too much weight. When you're driving in runs, it's great. And, if you are in an 8-run producer, it works. For 5% of baseball players, I view RBIs as a very valuable stat. For 10 to 15% of baseball players, I view batting average as a very valuable stat. And he's in the 10 to 15% I view batting average as a very valuable stat because he has to do it. And if he was hitting 215, if he was hitting 220 at this point, I'd be like, okay, yeah, like certainly at a medium. But he was at $150 coming into the weekend, and he's at 174 now. Like, this guy should never hit $150 over a 40-game stretch ever.
No, and he really can't, because through that stretch, he's essentially useless. Like,
right,
it's Luis Ariz. He's better defender and more athletic, but it's like if Luis Ariz is not hitting for average, what the hell is he doing for you? Right. So and Amador has more power potential and those things, and that's why he's a top prospect. But he's got to hit. I mean, nothing else really stands out. And again, I really do think it's a path thing. Because when you and I think that's something that he can rectify. I don't know if I have a ton of confidence in the Rockies helping him get there, but you never know. It's a little bit of different times over there.
Yeah,
I think when you look at the batted ball data on secondary stuff, particularly, it's pretty crazy. Against breaking balls, his average launch angle is 1 degree.
Ooh,
so I mean, it's just straight into the ground. Against curveballs in particular, it's -3 degrees. And I know like he got away with that even last year where it was kind of in the same area, but maybe it's just seeing more of them now and just beating them into the grounding and not quite as hard. And I think just more is a chopper instead of just a ground ball that's sneaking through, that's hit a bit harder. It might just be catching up to him a little bit too. So I'm very interested to see what this all looks like as we get a larger sample size. Yep. But I mean, even a 3-degree launch angle difference on breaking balls going from 3 degrees to 0 or whatever it may be, like that can make a pretty substantial difference. I also think the change-up side of things has been really interesting where in the past he'd been able to kind of hit those harder and he just has not been able to. So I do think it's path. I think he's going to get it right. I'm going to go similar to Spencer Jones, kind of high medium, but I think he's got plenty of time to work this all out, which is why I'm willing to be patient.
Where do you stand on Matt Shaw with the Cubs? 43 games. He's on a bit of a, heater right now. I think it's last week or so. He's been hitting the ball out of the ballpark. But Matt Shaw at this point has a 719 OPS, just 9 extra base hits entering play on Wednesday in 43 games in AA. With how hot he was at Maryland and then out of Maryland last year, this felt almost like a quick jab to the jaw where it's like it knocks you back for a moment. It's like, oh, I thought Matt Shaw was going to be flawless everywhere, to be honest. I'm at like a low medium, but it was just kind of shocking to see that he would kind of pop up in the negative query.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking, especially just we talked about it. Like he's made it look so easy every single stop. And then when I saw him in spring training, big league spring training and on the backfields in Arizona, I mean, some of the at-bats that I was seeing from this guy were ridiculous. So it is surprising. but it's also not like he's getting blown up to the degree of other guys. But like we're saying, and like you kind of preface with, he set the bar really high for himself with what he's been able to do. And this was a guy that we were talking about. Hey, like this could be somebody that gets fast tracked to Wrigley and ends up plugging in at third for them. Now I think I don't think they look at Shaw any differently, but I think they may look at him in terms of his timeline a little differently and might go another direction to go get a third baseman now, because it looks like Shaw's development may take a little bit more time. That's fine, because I think when he was drafted, this was kind of expected. There was expected to be maybe a little bit of a learning curve and a little bit of swing and miss, or at least just not quite as much of production out of the gate. But he just set the bar so high for himself. So I think he's earned a slow start and earned the benefit of the doubt there. And he is a very timing-oriented hitter, where we've talked about the malleability of his leg kicks, right? Where when he feels like he's got a lot of time, it's a big leg kick. And then when he feels rushed, it's a smaller and more subtle one. And I asked him, like, how do you do that? That's really hard to do. And he's like, it's always just kind of come natural to me. And that could be something that gets thrown off a little bit easier, especially as you're playing at some of the more challenging levels you've ever played at. And maybe as pitchers start to pitch you a little bit more differently. I would love to dive into some open side video on him, because I bet you it's just a slight little thing with his lower half in terms of just, where he's getting into his backside and staying there or not, because it just seems like he's pulling more than ever right now. He's kind of out and around. He's either out and around on the ground, or it's getting deep on him and he's shooting it the other way. So to me, that's kind of a guy that's feeling rushed, and that might just be a timing thing. So I'm going to go low with him, but it is very surprising.
Well, it may be like a somewhat tough fix for natural feel guys like that, where it's like, oh yeah, I just felt it and did it. Like, you just did that excellent right up on Corbin Carroll, and that guy screams natural feel guy, like, oh, it felt right.
And
so
athletic hitter.
Yeah, and athletic hitter. And it's just like, oh, I don't know what's wrong right now. It's just like, whatever feels natural, I do. And I've always been able to hit. Like, that's kind of the Matt Shaw answer too. So, this is really probably where you dive into the video, maybe for the first time.
Oh, I'm going to need to. The contact point is way deeper. So again, just seems like a guy that might be a little bit off timing wise, and pitches are getting deep on him. So you're seeing more balls shot the other way late, and then the out and around swing where you're trying to cheat forward to catch stuff, a little bit more out in front because you feel, rushed. Yeah. I'm surprised. You don't usually see like that much of a difference in contact point, especially on fastballs. And it's still a smaller sample, but it is fascinating to see how much deeper he's catching the ball, and then how he's trying to respond to combat that, which is being out and around and pulling. So I'm definitely going to dive into this one. This will be fun, but I'm not too worried about that. That happens, especially for a guy in his second pro season.
Yeah. All right. What's up with Tmar Johnson? Pittsburgh Pirates top hitting prospect. Tamar's hitting a $194. That's not the problem. The problem is the slug. He's slugging .313. So he's got a sub 700 OPS, 697 with a bandbox as his home ballpark in Greensboro. He's got just 3 homers. I'll ask you level of concern, but like, who is Tmar Johnson?
You tell me.
I don't know. You tell me.
I don't know. You tell me.
Let's do this for the next 20 minutes. It's so tough.
See how long people hold on. I would love to see that. But no, it's a question that I'd prefer to ask you, and it's a question you'd prefer to ask me, because nobody knows. We've talked about the perspective on this guy going from top hit tool to power over hit, and now I feel like he's trying to find a middle ground. And we talk about like guys trying to find that identity and how they can get stuck in between, and I feel like that's exactly where he's at right now. He's not striking out. When you put the numbers together, I hadn't checked in a little bit, and I was expecting a higher strikeout rate. What is it, 22%? Something like that?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's lower. It's just like, where's the impact here with Tmar? If he was swinging out of his shoes and he was punching 30% of the time, frankly, this would be more digestible to me than what's going on right now.
Correct. If he had 12 bombs and 30% K rate, but we're seeing him offset it with walks, and you could lean into, he's young and the hit tool will come along. There's just some fly balls that die at the track. There just doesn't seem like the impact has been there to the same level.
Greensboro, that doesn't happen. Like, we talked to Jared Jones. He let up a homer at 89 in Greensboro, and he was pissed after the fact. Understandably so.
Like, live it, which totally makes sense. I think what I'm seeing too is his mechanics. Like, he's tried to quiet some things down, and that's good. We've talked about that. We've been asking for that. But I thought, if he quiets some of that movement down, it shouldn't come at the expense of his power too much because of the fact that he has such ridiculous bat speed. But at the same time, he's 5'8", and he's not the biggest dude in the world. And maybe he needs all of that to really get his best swing off. 90th percentile exit velocity goes from 105 to 102 so far this season. I mean, that's a big drop. Quality of contact will impact that, but I also think it's just he's not getting as powerful of a swing off in general. That is a little concerning. He is making more contact, and he has cut the K rate down against the best competition that he's faced. But it is a little bit peculiar to see the impact suffer so much, and especially in such a hitter-friendly environment as you've mentioned. I think because he's still 19 and he's young, I'm still just going to go with the medium. And I do think that this could be the stepping stone to becoming that more well-rounded hitter where he can then, scale the power back up and say, okay, I figured out how to manage the K rate to a tolerable amount. Now I'm going to start to try to let it eat a little bit more. He might just be kind of feeling things out and trying to improve the bat to ball. But I feel like it's a guy trying to find his identity still right now, which is okay. 19 years old, like in professional baseball. And so that's why I'll go with the medium. If he was getting blown up and the power was not there, it would be high. But at least we're seeing that the contact has been better and that maybe he's trying to just get somewhere. And that gives me a little bit more patience with him.
Those surveys that you would fill out, and maybe you still fill out, where you have those like 5 to 7 boxes spanning from very likely to do something to very unlikely to do something. And if you want to get it over with, you just like bubble in every single one in the middle, or like you check the boxes in the middle, like no preference, no preference, no preference. I'm going to go medium because it's in the middle and I have no preference. Like it's what I can't decide. I can't wrap my brain around it. Like if for some reason my brain cannot compute what's happening with him. So I'm just going to go medium.
And he's just too talented. I mean, you can't teach that kind of bat speed and that strike zone awareness. I think when we went to the spring breakout game, just sitting right behind home plate there again, just mentioning that ball game again, because with the way that we were able to just kind of see some things a little bit differently, his knowledge of the strike zone really stood out in that ball game.
Yeah.
Against different arms that he'd never seen. I mean, taking balls that are a ball or two off, that he just with so much confidence.
From Cade Povich, like Tmar Johnson should be mincemeat for Cade Povich, but he wasn't.
No.
So impressive in spring breakout, but at this point, it's been a struggle. 2 Mets, different levels. Ryan Clifford, Luisangel Acuna. Ryan Clifford hitting a .194. Again, that's not the concern. 370 OBP, that's good. Like 200-point jump, crazy. He's slugging under 300. He's got a 299 slug. He's got just 2 homers in 43 games to this point. He's punching out all the time. We know that the punch outs are going to be there, but he had 2 homers in 43 games for Ryan Clifford. What's going on here?
Yeah, I've got a couple live books. I got to see him in Brooklyn, and I got to see him in the spring, and I saw some good swings, and then I saw some things that I was like, okay, I hope that doesn't bleed into the year, and that kind of has the front knee is an interesting thing to watch with him, where it gets really soft, and he gets really and he likes to hit against it, but when it looks like he feels like he's hitting against it, but he doesn't realize how much he's already drifting onto it. He's a big guy, and he just has too much of a power leak forward. Guys that are that big, you're going to have a longer swing, and then you're leaking forward onto that front leg. And the way that he tries to combat it, usually some guys will be, just softer and bend the front knee. His almost like gets like double jointed and bends backwards. I think I showed you a picture when we were on the backfields because he's fighting so hard against it. And I think that feeling almost makes him stiff and rigid because he's fighting so hard against his front side rather than finding a way to just stay in the backside, if that makes sense. Like I feel like he's like sticking his leg in the ground and trying to like fight his body off as if there's like hurricane force winds pushing him forward. It just seems like he's fighting himself a lot in the swing. He's hitting the ball hard. It's just for whatever reason, not really in the air consistently. But I'm confused with it because his ground ball rate's not that high. Brooklyn is a tough place to hit. And I think that suppressed the power some too, for sure. And I think that's also why they were okay with getting him up to Binghamton and just challenging him there.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, like I don't know where the power is. And I can't just blame it on putting the ball on the ground too much. I think it's just consistently being able to elevate with carry. I think a lot of the times when he's elevating, it's straight up in the air, or it's just like fly or like soft liners that chew up the barrel or like kind of chew up his hands. It just seems like he's slow to the ball right now and fighting himself. And I now with the positional limitations too, they're playing him a little bit more in the corner outfield, but he's playing first. He's got a crazy arm, but he's not going to give you a ton of value defensively. I'm leaning towards high just because it's got to be better than this. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's just he's slugging 299.
Yeah, it's not like I hear you, and I like the reasoning. It's got to be better than this. Sometimes, like in professional sports, it just has to be better than this. And we love looking at the underlying data and all that, but yeah, I hear you, man. Like with a power guy that is so defensively limited, how many like are there 2 guys per organization that have cannons for arms but cannot play a corner outfield to save their life?
Yeah, I would say so.
I think 2 guys per org. Yeah,
I think we could probably fly through each org. Mervis would be one in the Cubs. He'd be the first to tell you that. I've watched that guy running up to 95 on the mound, but he ain't playing the corner outfield. He'd be the first to tell you.
Like a Las Montes in Seattle and a Gabby Gonzalez in Minnesota. Like these guys all have rockets, but they cannot play the corner outfield to save their life.
No, which is always it's frustrating because you don't want to waste it. The last thing I'll say with Clifford too is like he's been more patient than we've seen him, but I don't think the swing decisions have been great overall. Like, a lot of leverage counts, taking fastballs. Sometimes it just seems like he wants to walk more than he actually wants to swing. I don't like seeing some of those things with him. And I think that's something that it just seems like he's in a tough spot right now. And trying to get acclimated to AA, of course, I'm not going to put too much stock into that. I just want to see more comfortable swings. I want to see a guy be the hunter, not the hunted when you're this type of player. And right now he just feels like the hunted.
Yeah. How about Luisangel Acuna? 48 games for Acuna in AAA at this point. He's got an OPS under 680. He's at 3 homers, 14 extra base hits in 48 games. So much of the appeal with Syracuse, understandably so, is on the hill, right? Christian Scott, Dom Hamill, now Blade Tidwell. They've got options. Jose Budo, for some reason, went back down to Syracuse. Bizarre. But Clifford's been, or not Clifford, Gilbert's been hurt, and Acuna has been underwhelming. Why has he been underwhelming, you think?
I think it's just really with him.
Is it young guy in AAA?
Young guy in AAA for sure.
Okay.
And I think he's been much better of late. If you look at what he's been doing lately, and I know we talked about like we wanted to do the whole season so far, but I'd be remiss not to mention like just the last 10 games from him. And I know it's a small sample, but young guy in AAA, this would kind of back the point of him settling in. Just turned 22. Last 10 games, he's 390, 435, 561. He should be on this, though, because it was really ugly out of the gate. And we saw you saw it with me on the backfields where like the Jekyll and Hyde aspect to his game where he'll have an at bat. It's like, what the hell was that? And then the next at bat, he grinds out a 3-2 count and shoots 105 the other way into the right center gap and gets on his horse and, makes it a triple. It's young and it's Acuna-ish. And those both check out here. I think when you look at him, he's trying to make contact. He's trying to survive up there. And I think a lot of that was bad contact, weak contact, and on the ground. He made a lot of progress, I think, right before the trade in the Rangers organization, where another guy that I dove into, he tried to emulate his brother's swing, and you got to be an alien life form to do that.
Yeah.
And he had too much of that sway, and it was just sway back, sway forward, and chop down on the ball, and everything was kind of working downwards. And then he made some tweaks to be able to stay and work behind it and elevate, and he cut the ground ball rate. He upped his exit velocities. Everything looked better. He still was hitting the ball harder, but I think he kind of got back to let me just get to the ball. Let me just put it in play. I can run. And I mean, dude, he has a 90% end zone contact rate this year. That's higher than it's ever been. But he's also got a ground ball rate that's been higher than it's ever been at 58%. He's also been a little bit more aggressive. So I think it was just trying to put the ball in play, trying to be that dynamic speed guy at the top of the order in the leadoff spot and trying to like lean into that role as a young hitter. I'd put low on him. even though it was so low, and it has nothing to do with what he's done in the last 10 games. I promise you, even before that, I would have still said low, because also you talked about the appeal. He's going to be one of the better base stealers. He can play shortstop at a pretty good level. He can play second base at an elite level. He can play center field. I don't need him to be a superb hitter. And I still think he can be. But if he's a guy that puts the ball in play and hits the ball hard enough, and he's going to need to fix some of these things a bit,
right?
He could be a 2 to 3 WAR player, even if he's a league average hitter. So
100%.
That's why I'm not worried about it at all. And then you factor in 22-year-old in AAA. You factor in some of the underlying batted ball data, and then of course just what he's been doing now more recently. And I think it's surely a low.
Got you. Another young guy in AAA that I kind of want to hit on here, Thomas Saggese in St. Louis to this point. And Thomas Saggese came on the show earlier this year. And, we were really excited to, see him kind of balling out. And he was balling out at the end of the year in AAA. And, he mentioned how close he feels to the big leagues. And yes, he's certainly close, but he struggled out of the gates to this point. And we could have adjusted our sights on Saggese maybe too much, like borderline over-adjusted last year because of how good he was in Double-A, Triple-A at such a young age. But Thomas Saggese, 45 games in Memphis to this point, slashing 228, 298, 363, 5 homers, and he's a run producer. He's really not producing that many runs right now. 22 driven in 45 games. It's a unique form of struggle for Saggese, I think, and he's been trying to reacclimate to short. I know he played it all the way through high school, but he really hasn't been a shortstop in pro ball. And now they're looking for, kind of a backup plan to Mason Wynn. And, Saggese just kind of feels like the youngin in that Memphis lineup that's been hitting.
I wanted to ask you, I want to spin this back on you. I mean, how much have you been able to see Saggese so far this season?
A decent bit. I got a full week live, and then I'll tune in once a week probably with him.
Let me guess, he's probably never really looked overmatched, but you almost forget he's there sometimes.
Not once. He is there are a lot of guys that I watch and I'm like, oh yeah, you look young or something. Like Owen Casey had one AB where he looked young, and then he had another where I was like, wow, you look like a top prospect. Saggese never looks young, but he hasn't been, overwhelming. I think he doubled, and it was 107, 108 off the bat in Indy. And even that, I was just like, yeah, that wasn't whoa, this guy's here. I don't know. He just hasn't looked like the top 60 prospect in baseball so far this year, but he also hasn't looked, like a 22-year-old in AAA.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I'm torn on him. I'm definitely not overly concerned, and I'd probably lean towards a low here. But I do think you're right. We might have got a little ahead of ourselves. I fell in love with what I'd seen in person, with the video, because I loved how natural of a hitter he is too. And the contact rates were just so good down the stretch. And I love the swing. It's just so simple. It's so old school. I just get in there. I rub some dirt on my hands. No batting gloves. I'm in a relaxed, he literally looks like if you just handed a bat to someone on the street and said, just get in a stance. And I mean that in a good way. He just is in a comfortable spot, and he just throws his hands at the ball and has such a great feel for the barrel. And he's twitchy. But it seems like right now he's just another guy that's a little bit out of whack timing wise, because it seems like fastballs are chewing him up more than anything else. And that was something that did not chew him up last year. He hit 314 against four-seamers last year with a sub 10% swinging strike rate, whereas so far this season against fastballs, he is hitting just 135 against four-seamers with a 15% swinging strike rate. Swing looks mostly the same. There's another guy that I want to do an open side look. It could just be a subtle thing for him, because he shuffles the feet a little bit Arenado style, and he naturally probably gets into his backside and probably never had to think about it that much. Yeah. So it could have just gotten away from him a little bit. He's always been aggressive, and that can also be something that's catching up to him some. But I am really interested to see why there's such a stark difference in the four-seamers. I'm still going to go low. He just turned 22. He's not getting blown up, and I'm seeing a lot of deep fly balls and stuff like that. He's got to cut the chase down, though, to take pressure off of that hit tool a little bit. And also it takes pressure off of the slug.
I'm also low because he seems like a natural see ball, hit ball kind of guy
Yep.
that just like is, hey, 45 games in, he's not seeing ball, hitting ball, but
Exactly.
when June, July rolls around, he'll probably see ball, hit ball, and he'll be just fine.
That's basically what I was saying in a much more elongated and ridiculous way.
No, I'm really good at dumbing it down because I'm not very smart, which is great.
Yeah.
I've got at this point Shaw and Saggese open side looks written down, so I'm keeping tabs of who you got to look at open side.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Two more youngins: Sebastian Walcott of the Rangers, Arjun Nimmala of the Blue Jays. Walcott, 41 games, slashing 176, 321, 294 in high A, which is a 615 OPS. You're not concerned in the slightest. I'm going to spoil it here.
Yeah, who cares?
Okay.
If I told you a 6'4", 18-year-old who hits mammoth nukes, like he's power over hit.
Yeah.
Got assigned straight to high A.
Crazy. That was nuts, by the way.
What would your expectation be for him?
330 with a 550 slug. And probably in the big leagues by the All-Star break.
Yeah. This is almost Ethan Salas level to me. And I'm cool with it. Like, I'm cool with the aggressive push because it seems like Walcott's a guy that they don't care about his trade value. They don't care about any of that. I think they're keen on just, hey, let's challenge him and let's see what he can do. He has gotten off some of the best swings I've seen this year. Like, that's the craziest part is there's one. Did I send it to you from Chase at MLB Central, which, by the way, one of the best accounts ever. If you don't follow him on Instagram and stuff like that, I mean, he will keep you up to date as well as anybody with what's going on in the minor leagues. And he's breaking promotions now.
Dude, I do a scroll. Whenever we hop on the call up, I do a scroll of MLB Central on Twitter and Chase's Twitter. I'm just like, okay, like who got bumped to what level? Let's go see. He's one-stop shopping for me for promotions.
I love it. And that's literally what he does. He's amazing. But he posted this open side video of Sebastian Walcott where he adjusts to a breaking ball down and gets down there and just golfs it out. And the athleticism and the adjustability was insane. That was a swing that I was like, I've not seen a swing like that at the lower levels in a while, let alone from an 18-year-old who's 6'4". He's chasing at a sub 20% clip. He's not even whiffing that much compared to what I think a lot of people would have expected. And he's cut it down. Really, it was the first couple games where he had some, I think, couple like high strikeout games. And then since then has really whittled it down. I just have zero concern about a guy with that swing that's that talented. At 18 years old, he's going to be 18 until spring training next year, playing shortstop every day pretty much and third base a little bit for a high A team. He's going to get hot in the second half, and I think he's going to become one of the more hyped up prospects in baseball in the second half.
Got you. How about Arjun in Toronto? Arjun Nimmala, 29 games. I think it was dev list for a minute. I think they just, said, hey, like, let's pump the brakes here and like, let's give you a moment to recalibrate because 29 games for him. He's slashing a $167, 280, 306, 125 plate appearances. He's punched out 43 times. Mm-hmm. Did you see a 33% K rate coming?
No, but I also can understand it. I know you love Nimmala too. I think this is another one of those, like, maybe we got ahead of ourselves a little bit because I think about it from this lens. Out of the draft, he has this helium because all of a sudden this super underrated, toolsy kid ends up just impressing through a stretch on the summer circuits. There was always kind of concern about the rawness of his game, but because he showed out on a stretch of the summer circuits, all of a sudden it's like, okay, maybe that's coming along. And also he's hitting the ball so hard and he has a unique story and background. So he might just finally be polishing the rest of his game. One of the younger guys in the class too. So I think people are a little bit more tolerant of maybe the raw aspect to his game. But then we saw him in a snippet in pro ball and the swing just looks so good. And when he is on time and under control, it is a super impressive swing. Like this is the kind of guy that right now where he's at in batting practice, that swing's like ready for double A. But the problem is he gets thrown out of that swing so easily because he's seeing pitching that he's never seen before. His stint at the complex was very short. Then it's straight to low A. And I just don't think I don't think there was anybody else in the class that you could really compare that big of a leap to competition-wise. Like, I think it's very similar to even the Max Clark conversation, maybe, where, yes, he played on the summer circuit a ton and did play against a lot of top competition, but I think we're kind of seeing the leap from, Indiana high school competition to, low A to a degree with him too. I go medium just because of getting dev listed and going to, have to adjust some things. And just because of how high we are on him as a guy that was a top 100 prospect, but it's more of just a medium relative to how high we were pushing him. If we didn't have Arjun Nimmala in the top 100, it'd be low. It's just how high I set the bar for him, and I think you did too. It is disappointing, but it also is not shocking because I think we were almost a little bit ambitious on our expectations for him, and he might just be a slower burn. I still think he's flashed a lot of his talent, even this season alone. And we've seen some really impressive swings and some impressive athleticism.
Yeah, he's medium rare. Like he's low to medium for me because he's so ridiculously young. And I'm with you. It's medium because he was a top 100 guy. And I thought the world of him. And I thought that he would be tracking in a similar way to McGonigal at this point. But I think that was unfair of me because McGonigal, like so much of the billing on him was he's super advanced. And Nimmala, I was just like, he's super toolsy and like that may, catch up to the advanced guy that is less tooled out. And it just like, it doesn't work that way for 18-year-olds. So
sports is too hard, man.
Yeah, it was too hard. So I was caught there and, like that's why I'm medium rare.
Me too. I'm also realizing we're at an hour. Should we do 2 episodes and do more arms on the next one?
I'm thinking so. I've got 7 arms listed right now, but I can grab more.
We could grab more arms and get more into it because I know this is your bread and butter, and this will actually allow me to send you all of the data notes that I have on these guys so that you can have a little bit more time to crash course that stuff for the pitching side too.
I'm in. Do we make it the front part of Trey Morgan or do we make it 2 episodes?
It's a good question.
I don't know.
Let us know in the YouTube comments. Yeah, what do you want?
Yeah.
We'll figure that out. But yeah, look out for Trey Morgan. Really excited about that. I think depending on how long we go with Trey, we can decide. But I think it's a fun scheduling week regardless. And I put out the bonus episode just legitimately flying through every top 100 candidate and basically pushing and pulling in my own head. I think it was a pretty cool listen. Just honestly, just discussing what I've seen that makes him a candidate, what might make him not make the cut, and going through all of that. So you can subscribe to those bonus episodes in the episode description. We'll be doing another mailbag for that soon when we do the update on the top 100 to answer subscriber questions. We will also do that for the podcast, but of course we get a lot more questions for the regular podcast. So we can't get to all of them with the subscriber show. We were able to get to every single question from subscribers. I'll wrap with this, Jack, now that we have a few extra minutes. Who are you most concerned about?
On here?
Yeah.
And
for those listening, I'll rehash them. Ethan Salas, I went with a low. Spencer Jones, I went with a medium, high medium. Colson Montgomery, low. Adley Amador, medium. Matt Shaw, low. Tmar Johnson, did we settle on medium?
Yeah, medium.
Yeah, medium. Ryan Clifford, high. Luisangel Acuna, low. Sebastian Walcott, low. Thomas Saggese, medium.
Yeah.
Arjun Nimmala, medium, relative to what we were expecting. So for me, the answer is Ryan Clifford of this group. But I think Clifford is high because we had him in the back end of the top 100, and I think there's a chance he just doesn't hit enough.
Yeah.
Spencer Jones, though, is right there too. Again, Spencer Jones might be a high. I might have to amend and say Spencer Jones is a high. The more I'm thinking about it, I think I'm just trying to be too optimistic.
So for me, I was torn between Jones and Amador, but the more I just let it sit over the last 20 seconds, Amador is the highest for me because again, like there's just limited value outside of, what he does in the batter's box. And if he's hitting $150 in a month and a half, like you can't do that. So like,
I sent you a couple swords too,
and they were bad. Yeah, like there were swords, and then there's that. Like he looked like Bryce Terang against Jared Jones a couple of times, and that can only happen once in your professional life.
Yeah, I mean, I sent that to a couple of buddies who were playing, and I was just like, "How does this happen?" And he's like, "Been there." I got from multiple people. I got been there. That's called in between, and it's the worst feeling in the world. So I am hoping he can kind of get out of that in between feeling, but that just shows you, I think, how domed up he is right now, and he is seeming to come out on the other side a little bit more, but. I'd rather see these hits spread out than just one 5-hit game with 2 homers and then kind of back to an 0 for 4 2 days later. But that'll do it for this episode. Trey Morgan this week, top 100 update this week. Check out that Corbin Carroll swing breakdown piece. I think even if you're not that interested in the big league side of things, it is a helpful way to kind of see the way that I guess we look into swings when we're looking at prospects and some of the components that we're looking at as well when we talk about it on the show. If you could leave a rating, help us grow the show, that would be awesome. Subscribe to our YouTube, both here on the Call Up and on the Just Baseball Show side. That would be great too. We're going to be doing some more of these swing breakdown videos. I'm going to do one on Carson Williams coming up. I'm going to be doing a video for Corbin Carroll. I think we're going to do some more on other prospects when we do these dives. So I think some more unique short form YouTube content as well is going to continue to come out on the Call Ups YouTube. And subscribe to the socials. Elijah Evans has been crushing it on Twitter. I mean, in reality, like you've got probably MLB Pipeline putting out the highlights, and then I don't know if anyone else is putting it out, especially the way that Elijah's doing it. And it's not just going to be the MLB Pipeline top 100, right? Like Elijah's on it. He does great stuff for Sox futures or future Sox.
Yeah,
future Sox.
Sox futures are looking bleak right now.
Yeah. But I will say, like, he does a good job there, and he knows the minor leagues, so you get tidbits on the number 12 guy in a system that's really swinging it too. Like, you're not going to miss the Zebby Matthews propaganda either. So follow the Call Up on Twitter as well, and follow Elijah Evans as well, especially if you care about White Sox prospects. Look forward to talking prospects with you tomorrow.